All right, what's up, party people? It's Friday. My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Today, I'm joined by Victor Garlington. Victor, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, fantastic, Sonny. Thanks for having me. Good day. Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you too. So where in the world are you? Where are you
Well,
calling in
today
from?
I'm in Florida. Our company is
Oh,
headquartered out of Washington State. We do a lot of farming in South Carolina, and then we got new projects going on in Louisiana. And of course, we're already planted in Africa.
interesting. Hey, do you want to tell, or just maybe share, just off the top, what Bioeconomy Solutions does, like the company you're working at or working with, and then also just maybe lay out, yeah, a little bit about what you guys do, and then we'll probably just
Sure,
put that
sure.
on ice, and then come back to it like near the end of the interview again.
Okay. So, Victor Garlington, Bioeconomy Solutions, we create carbon infrastructure for institutional capital. So, we're deploying this infrastructure that has a long term view into many different factors, which we'll kind of get into. But a tree is not just a tree. You see a tree for shade, you see a tree for beauty. We look at it as a carbon infrastructure network, part of our network.
In what sense? In the sense that
Well,
like
carbon is money.
trees breathe. Is it in that sense, like the fact
Well,
that
think about it for a second. When
yeah.
you've heard this in many different cultures, ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Mm.
We're all carbon entities. We're all organic. So what we're doing is growing one of the fastest growing trees, the little known hardwood that no one's ever heard of, as our carbon orchard. And then we're taking that and creating many higher value carbon products from it.
Interesting.
That's what we do.
Interesting. Cool. So
So we grow stuff in dirt.
you grow stuff in dirt, something I need to do more of. My dad, however, is really big into. He loves being in the backyard and always he's tinkering in his on his
Right,
garden, and I grew up seeing
right.
that. So tell me, growing up, what kind of kid were you? Were you always drawn to the outdoors, or did that
Oh
come
yeah, I
later?
grew up in Lawton, Oklahoma. That's another one of those blink you miss it towns. But my dad was in the military, and we were in Lawton, Oklahoma, prairie dog country. So my favorite pastimes were crawdadding and groundhogging and fishing as a kid. So I liked the outdoors quite a bit.
Very cool. So you served in the Air Force
Yes, I did.
for a decade, starting in 1990.
Right,
So what
right.
made you enlist, and what was that experience like for a young person?
Well, it's interesting. My father was in the military at the time, and he retired some 30 years. And he goes, "Son, I'm in the army, but you should go to the Air Force." I said, "Okay, great, I'll do that." When what I thought about the Air Force was freedom and opportunity. For me, it was school versus an opportunity to travel the world. And I thought, man, that would be great. And I did both things. I did school and I did travel the world.
Oh, very cool. And then after the military, you moved into sales at Military Stars. How did that
Right.
transition feel, going from the service into the business world?
Well, you ask anyone that knew me back then, I was always trying to find the next great best thing. And at the time, Military Stars was a job fair company. We helped transitioned and future transitioning men and women get their first jobs. And we did job fairs from the Northwest down to Florida. And we did that two or three a year until the great 1996 hit in 97, 98, and then no one was hiring anyone at the time. So then I had a come to Jesus, says, man, I should do something that helps the earth. And that led me to biodiesel after that. But yeah, that's how I got into Military Stars. We were helping other veterans just like us get their first jobs.
And you've also described yourself as just a regular guy who wanted to save money on fuel. So was there like a personal frustration that pushed you toward making
Oh
your own
yeah. I
biodiesel?
mean, some of the same things, you see a lot of cyclical things happening over and over and over again. If you take time to really sit back and look at it, gas prices were high, right? And then people were like, man, what are we gonna do? And I was like, man, Vegetable oil. Vegetable oil. Yeah, you could take vegetable oil and do rudimentary high school chemistry and make fuel. What? Yes. And then we took that a step higher. We said, well, we're going to produce the most technologically advanced biodiesel equipment ever. So we were doing transesterification with microbes. So imagine microbes taking the oil and turning it into biodiesel. So great stuff. But then I
And
came to a realization after that.
which is?
So I went to true story. I went to Africa and I went to Nigeria and I says, well, if the mother of palm originated in Africa, in Nigeria, that's where the Asian folks had gotten that information from, is from Nigeria. So I need to go to Nigeria and look for some palm oil for my customers, because a big, expensive, technologically advanced machine is nothing more than a paperweight if you don't have the vegetable oil to go through it. So I went there and I said, I should be in the feedstock end of it. We should be growing oil above ground instead of pumping it from below ground. So that took me to where I am now, Bioeconomy Solutions.
You also spent over a decade at 70 cents a gallon. Is that right? Selling biodiesel
Oh
equipment
yeah, we were selling
fuels.
biodiesel equipment all over.
Yeah.
We had a lot of deals with high schools and technical colleges that were teaching it. It's great, but things have transcended, because when I first got started, you could get paid to take the vegetable oil away, and then it transitioned to, hey, you got to pay me if you want my used vegetable oil, and then you heard a bunch of stories where people were actually stealing it. So yeah.
And then was there like a single moment or project where you thought this tree thing could maybe change everything?
Well, I thought greener is better. I'm a
Mm.
tree hugger at heart. So greener is better. If it's clean and green and it helps the earth, it helps the people, it helps society, it helps push energy forward. Yeah, let's do it.
That's fascinating. And then millions of, what is it, megaflora trees planted in the
Right,
Gobi
right.
Desert since 2012. I mean, that's an insane undertaking. What was it, like the turning point that got
Well, I
that project
met
off
my
the ground?
mentor, Ray Allen, who's unfortunately passed away now. He passed away in 2020 due to COVID complications. But he had started in Fresno, California back in the 90s. And he wanted to create the most commercially viable Palonia tree the world had ever known. So he took basically three different strains of Palonia. There's 17, and there's a number of hybrids, and he created his own special blend. Well, if you know anything about California, if it's not native, then it's probably not going to get planted there very easily. So he got a call from China, of all places, and he told me this story and showed me all the pictures. And I wasn't there; I was doing my own thing at the time in the 90s. But it took him all the way to China, back and forth to China some 60 times. And in that time frame, he planted millions and millions of these trees that he created, his own hybrid cross called the Megaflora. And that Megaflora tree, you'll see it in all sorts of products, from window blinds to toys to beds to instruments that come over here. And if you ever picked up a lightweight blind and you said, man, that's super light, what is that? It's probably Polonia.
So the U.S. labels Polonia a weed, right? While Japan puts it on their passport and their coins.
Right.
When did you realize that perhaps America had it completely backwards?
Well, let me tell you, I was stationed in the Air Force in Japan, and I was married, newlywed, to my wife, and she said, "Hey, pick up that dresser and move it from there to there." And most Americans like, "Okay, that's going to be heavy. That's got to be oak. That's going to be something super heavy. I got to go call the neighbor." So, being the guy I was, I just said, "Okay, let me try to move it," and I picked it up by myself, and I moved it over, and I'm like, "Wow, that was light." I didn't know it at the time, but that was Polonia. This is 25 years ago. So, going back to your question, is America has always been open to new opportunities, but not commercially so for markets. Even today, when you call the most exotic hardwood purveyors around the world and you say, "Hey, my name is Sonny Ray. I got a great exotic wood and I want to see if I can sell you some." And they're going to go, "Great. What is it?" Polonia. Never heard of it. So the big thing about that here is if no one is calling the exotic wood place for Polonia, they're not going to be calling Sunny Ray for Polonia. So what we're doing at Bioeconomy Solution is really telling the story of its origination, its uses, its applications, and trying to educate the world on what can be done with Polonia, not just an ornamental tree that looks good. It's not a tree that's going to be invasive to everything that it touches. That's only one. That's called the tomatosa tree, and that's banned in some areas in the United States. But there's 17 total species, not to mention its hybrids.
What was the hardest lesson you learned during those early years of trying to get people to take this tree seriously?
Really, everyone has a PhD on Google. If you're ever familiar with Google, Google doesn't tell you the positive things first. It always tells you the negative things first. So the first thing you see when you Google Polonia, everyone is invasive. But it doesn't say, hey, that's just this one species. There's 16 others, and not to mention a whole hybrid of other trees, probably 17 or more, that are non-invasive. They're seed sterile. And our trees are non-GMO. They're seed sterile. They're only able to propagate through root cuttings and also the tissue culture lab we have. So that's it. But the most interesting story I have for you is when I called and I said, listen, I didn't have any equipment at the time, Sonny Ray. I didn't have a harvester, a $300,000 harvester. I didn't have, all of this logging equipment, $500,000 worth of logging equipment. So I called. I said, hey, listen, my name is Victor. I have this tree. I want you to come harvest it, and I need you to do so. I have a pocket full of money burning a hole in my pocket. Can you help me? They said, what do you call it? Polonia. And the guy goes, we don't harvest no Polonia. I said, well, why not? You harvest trees, it's just another tree. But I learned that there is a order to things, especially when you are contacting commercial harvesters and working with landowners and all that stuff. So I had to learn like how to navigate. And I like to tell everybody, I'm first generation. What does that mean? Sonny, that means I'm first generation logger. I'm first generation sawmill owner. I'm first generation, farmer, if you will. So, but that all had to come with the school of hard knocks and actually getting my hands dirty and getting out there and figuring out what was real and what was not. So after 9 years, I can definitely tell you I have a PhD in Polonia.
That's awesome. So tell us about bioeconomy solutions today. What exactly are you building and who is it for?
Well, we're working for the next generation of energy, of fuels, of feedstocks. When you look at my previous statement, carbon is money. The tree grows very, very fast. So we can harvest that tree and we can make that tree into chips. Those chips become biochar. That biochar becomes a myriad of other things. So it can become sustainable aviation fuel, it can become green ammonia, it can become green methanol, it can become renewable diesel, it can become, you know, green renewable fuel for the marine industry. If you look at companies in the maritime industry, they're all running off green methanol now. So we can take with our syngas technology, we can take our tree, produce the chips, put that in our syngas unit, and have green methanol for the largest container ship in the world.
Wow. So you created something called Guardian Framework. Break that down for
Right.
us in plain language.
Sure, sure. Right now, when you look at the World Economic Forum and other entities, they say that we're experiencing mass devastation of our forest, deforestation at a large, rapid rate, some 4,500 hectares per day. Let's think about that for a second. 4,500 hectares, 24 hours gone. And then 365 days a year, that's the size of what, Rhode Island, gone every year. So what we're doing is saying, listen, trees that take 50 years to 100 years to mature, let's protect those. And under the Guardian framework, what we're able to do is plant in segmented, segregated areas, which are experiencing some sort of problem. They may be not good for growing agricultural crops. They may be experiencing or have experienced desertification. So we can protect those old growth forests that take 50 years or 100 years to grow. And we can take something, a tool like Palonia, which takes 5 to 7 years to mature, and it regrows from the stump once we cut it. So it just grows back again. So we can protect those old growth forests by giving a new option. And when you look at areas like Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, you know, most households still use wood as their cooking medium for energy. So you exacerbate that with, their other needs for energy plus cooking, deforestation. So let's give them another alternative. The guardian species is that alternative. And that's the framework that we're promoting.
Very cool. So your company's also is now tying together carbon credits with blockchain verification
Right.
and closed cycle greenhouse tech. So how do all these pieces fit together?
Well, institutional capital has not deployed to nature based solutions because there's no transparency. That means they deploy the capital and you don't hear that something's wrong until the capital is gone or you need another capital call. So, what we're doing is providing the Formula One of trees. What do you think about Formula One? Well, let's bridge the gap. Formula One and trees. If you follow Formula One, you know the race is not won just on the track. Its race is won with data. So each Formula One car has about 300 data points or sensors on it, and it tracks each race about 1.4 gigabytes of data. So take that same technology we're calling telemetry and apply that to the tree. We're able to read the water, the microorganisms that are around it, whether the tree needs to have another sort of fertilizer, more water, less water. So we're able to be proactive in the tree's care rather than reactive, if you look at latent data like MRV. So we layer that and we call it the three T's. We call it traceability, transparency. So we build trust with our institutional capital partners. And we're able to do that with data. And then we're able to layer that on our data. We have a platform that we have just for our institutional partners where they can see in real time where our organization is planted, the health of those trees, and how they're growing day to day in real time. So we're using real time data, Sonny, and that's
Mm,
what we're doing. And then that real time data, we're able to use something called net equal exchange, which actually tracks the amount of carbon from the atmosphere down into our carbon plantations. And then we emit those tokens in real time.
interesting. So you're planting in Africa, South Carolina, California, and the
Yeah, if
Gobi.
you look at our YouTube page, you'll see Burkina Faso is, one of our shining stars. That's in the Sahel Desert. And people say, "You're planting in the desert?" It's like, yeah. Why
That's
wouldn't you
wild.
be?
So how do you pick where to plant and how do you scale?
Well, it's more really about a good partner. As you know, just like children or anything, it takes a partner to care for those things. And these young saplings are just like kids. They need water, they need care for the first 2 years before they take off. But after that 2 years, they're gone to the sky. So we're really talking about care. This is not one of those set it and forget it like pines where you plant it and you come back 5 years later, 10 years later, and the tree's straight and tall. Polonia is not that whatsoever. It's more akin to raising corn. So It takes aggressive pruning for the first 2 years. It grows some 10 to 25 feet a year. So if you want that straight trunk, you have to prune the limbs off of it to get that outcome for dimensional commercial lumber. So again, this is about management and partners, and we're looking for alignment. So to answer your question, we're looking for people that are aligned with us in our vision. And if we're aligned, then great. We'll pull out a seat at the table and we can join each other and have a great time.
The AI industry right now is building massive data centers that are obviously
Mm-hmm.
energy hogs.
Mm-hmm.
You've written about this community problem. How does Polonia fit into this conversation?
Well, especially when you look at the data centers that are using actual engines to power them, and those engines emit gases, you know, carbon monoxide. We can plant Polonia around the perimeter and it absorbs that. Not only will it help keep down the dust, stocking it, but Polonia can help actually filter the air. I mean, look at what a tree does anyway. A tree does what? It takes in CO2 and emits oxygen. And it looks good while it's doing it. But if you plant one of the most voracious consumers of carbon dioxide, the Polonia actually absorbs 10 times more carbon dioxide than an oak tree. 10 times. So, and it grows
Whoa.
very fast. So when you deploy that carbon infrastructure at scale, you get an overall change for that area.
So carbon credits have a trust problem, right? So
Right,
Vera got exposed for questionable offsets.
right.
How does your model avoid that same trap?
Well, again, it's all about the transparency, the traceability, and the trust. You got to actually know how those carbon credits were minted, right? In what fashion. And, we're actually doing something that no one else seems to be doing is we don't have brokers. We own the actual plantations. So it comes directly from us. One of the things that we want to implement is having a camera where people can see our workers in the field in real time, where you press a button when you're on our platform. You say, hey, there's Adama right there in Burkina Faso. He's waving at the camera. It's real. It's ours. There's no third party broker. So again, the traceability, the transparency helps build the trust. Not only that, the new darling of carbon credits is biochar. Are you familiar with biochar, Sonny?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well, biochar is different than charcoal. Charcoal that you get to go on the grill for the weekend or Memorial Day weekend and have everybody out and put the grill on. Charcoal is made with oxygen. Biochar is made in the absence of oxygen. So it becomes this very durable, long term, durable component. And if you look and do some more research, the Amazon, they've tracked in the Amazon biochar that was put in the earth some 2,000 years ago, and it's still intact. So biochar is the new darling because of scientific background research, and that it is in our environment in so many ways. Biochar not only is a great implement for the soil, but you can produce also 55 different types of products for industrial applications. I mean, large industrial applications, from water to sewer to it's in our clothes, it's in our soaps, you name it. Biochar is everywhere.
So fascinating. So Victor, if everything goes right for bioeconomy solutions, let's say over the next 5 years,
Right.
what does the world look like?
It looks a lot greener. What do I mean by that? This is not charity. This is about bioeconomy solutions. Is about nature-based solutions that actually generate revenue. It's not charity at all. When you look at the carbon infrastructure for the steel industry, the steel industry in America alone, 70%, over 70% of the steel produced in the United States is produced by electric arc furnaces. Traditionally, the carbon for electric arc furnaces comes from coal, and they're changing that now to biochar because it's cleaner, it's greener, and we can produce that with the fastest growing tree on earth with our carbon orchards. We can produce a green carbon alternative for steel industry. We can do that also for a myriad of industries, from water filtration to chemical reactions for different industries, as well as your clothes for farms. Did you know that biochar is actually fed to animals in some countries, which helps with their digestion, produces a healthier animal? You have less inoculations for those animals. So that means your cost to care for those animals come down if they're not as sick and you don't have to inoculate them as much. The slurry, there's no smell. Could you imagine going into a pig farm, you don't smell anything that you didn't want to smell? That's the power. And then you can take that same input, because that biochar becomes charged with that nitrogen and with that urine. You can put that on the field, and it's like a time release of moisture, of nutrients, all when the field needs it, and it pulls it right out of the biochar. So biochar is amazing. To be able to provide that at scale is the next entity where we want to be. We want to produce trees everywhere. We want to produce biochar. We have a plan for a 26 site biochar network here in the United States, and that's going to feed a number of different industries. That's where we want to be in 5 years.
I love it, Victor. Well, thank you once again for your time. If people want to learn more, if they want to double click on either the company or yourself, are you
Right.
mostly on LinkedIn, or where's the best place to get more
Yeah,
information?
you can visit our website at bioeconomysolutions.com or visit us on LinkedIn. We have a very vibrant YouTube page as well. We have over 500 videos to teach you everything that you never wanted to know about Palonia and what we're doing.
Dude, you're awesome. So thank you so much. I mean, gotta admit, this is it's new knowledge, new knowledge. So I'm taking it in, and fascinating, fascinating. It just goes to show how
Spread the
big the
word.
world is, man. Well, I'm doing that right now. So thank you all for
Appreciate you.
the 15 people that are watching live. Have a great weekend, and then everyone else who checks this out. Until next time, bye bye.
Thanks so much, Sonny.